Um, I didn't know her as a liar any more than I knew her as a thief, because she's not those things, and neither am I. So, I drew up the help of a friend, a good friend. I drew up like a chart because in the nature of in which she's gone. It's like I'm on my way home from a trip, visiting with friends, and she didn't want to go on. And yeah, we were having some marital issues, and the space I thought was beneficial in a sense, and it was a productive visit and everything like that. Well, I come back to just a wrecked home, and her not at the home, all of her things at the home, all of her substances at the home that I flushed and got rid of and everything, because I didn't want that to be an issue, because we partied and stuff. And when I talk about substances and things, I don't indemnify myself from participating in weakness, but I mean, hell. Then all of a sudden, it's like I'm up against like something that is very, very, very it was immoral for sure, and it was wrong. It was just wrong. I don't know what. Because in the end, the only goodbye I got was an immature kind of act, on behalf of her father, where he just like waves goodbye to me after he steals all my shit out of my home. He's probably completely unaware and like indifferent to the whole thing, as he'd been unaware and indifferent to me or anything for 10 years that we were together, and the almost 5 years that we were married. So I didn't have anything to go by. So far it's been 18 months, and I've been just left for dead and forgotten in the matrimonial domicile, having to maintain a home. In addition to the bills associated therein, I've been having to maintain my sanity. In the process of all of this stuff, there was a massive smear campaign wherein I have texts and messages from her saying, that she'd never do anything to besmirch my name or my business, which I had a fine diners, a National Geographic travel. A Pulitzer Prize-winning author wrote a short story about my restaurant. It wasn't a shitty place. We went 10 years with no issues until she was out the door, and then all of a sudden, boom, downhill. So I've had to piece together things from just like text and stuff, and like fortunately, she left behind an iPad that we both used or whatever, and I logged into it, and then her messenger was up there, and that's where I saw just things that just broke me and just split the whole thing up, between her telling me, that she was being abused by her family, her telling me that she couldn't come see me, and that she'd sneak out of her parents' house to come to her home. She's 37 years old. And so, there were a lot of red flags. But, from the abuse, there's just so covert that, only there were a few people that came out from the community to tell me what was going on. And, I behaved as like any concerned spouse would. I took action to try to get her out of there legally, and that was completely violated, And being in the 9th Judicial in Rapides Parish in Louisiana, no. It's all about who you know. I would be told by an officer who was detaining me to Department of Corrections, cell number 84. I never even got arrested whenever police walked into my home and just raped my civil rights. They didn't give a shit. You know, so blame. I mean, ultimately, I have to. Because, like I said, I can't. To me, it's unconscionable to blame her or myself. But you know, how do you blame yourself for, you know, not knowing anything and not being told anything that's true? How do you blame yourself for losing a business because of you know, people who actively, you know, set out to end the business because of their malignance or whatever, you know, or their inability to stay out of our business. Now, what I saw and what I know happened is that every piece of shit that we'd had any kind of contact or dealing with in our personal dealings and stuff, all of them came out of the woodwork to support, you know, the efforts that were being made by her narcissist fucking father. That while she found, like, you know, good friends and all this kind of stuff in people, you know, I saw not good friends at all, because these are people that were advising her, you know, to not go to her husband. They're advising against, you know, kind of those things that are sacred in God's law and God's covenant of marriage. You know, if someone's giving you advice that is not pro marriage or anything, then they're not serving God at the highest level. I mean, and you know, these people, a lot of them were married people. One of the main participants in cheering my wife on, you know, my former wife, I gotta get used to saying that. One of the main participants in cheering my ex-wife on in this whole sordid affair, I was there to provide for their wedding, you know, and the man that she married, this woman that she married, I provided for them. I helped them get a job and everything else, you know. So they decided that they were going to usurp me for whatever reason. And the only thing that I can think of is that, you know, my former spouse was lying to them about things. Where the only kind of the excuse or the reason that I have for her doing these things is because she was maligned against me as abused by her family during a time that she was receiving a paid medical leave of absence from the state for an injury to her mental health. So all these shit-heeled people come out of the woodwork to essentially enable, you know, her father's abuse via her while she's suffering a mental illness. I mean, not 3 weeks before she's out the door, she'd stop dead in their tracks, SSRIs. And I've read horror stories about how antidepressants will ruin marriage, destroy people's lives and everything else. And here she had a doctor who was family to them, you know, who I have to assume who could read a medical record, despite having a history, you know, of negative, you know, impact, I guess I should say, negative circumstances and just chaotic shit that would come about, you know, whenever she's on antidepressants, and would just turn around and prescribe her an antidepressant, take her off of it, give her another one, all the while knowing that she's taking benzodiazepines via another health practitioner, with orders that she stopped taking it, but no drug testing or no anything to make sure. Because I mean, that combination, I'd later discover in her life, it had caused many problems, you know, over several instances in her life, where these big, giant, huge, massive just, you know, trauma inducing, you know, fits and episodes, you know. And the common factor, going back to the chart that I talked, was her parents. And so, you know, I can only assume that because they are aware that they've been involved in these big giant traumatic episodes time and time and time and time again over a matter of decades in her life, that's the manner in which they abuse her. Now, she had an injury to her mental health, what happened on the job, and we talked about blame. I blame Rapides Parish School Board and the lack of oversight over Jennifer Scott, who was the you know, the administrator over the school that my former spouse was working in. And I was there, you know, I know what the woman was doing to my former spouse, and overworking her, and pouring down workload of shit that she didn't have to be doing, or she wasn't qualified to do, like computer repair, IT consulting, graphic design, and all this other shit, while the administrator was off driving around shopping for furniture for her home or whatever, you know, or whatever. And the woman, the administrator of this school, she crossed the line. She overstepped boundaries that just are unbelievable and unprofessional, at least. And, you know, like group texting and group emails. I mean, my former spouse had a phone that was issued to her from her school. And this administrator, it was just nonstop. 7 days a week with these texts. And of course, everybody had to participate, you know. Participation wasn't officially mandatory, but you know, if you didn't participate and you worked on her, then, you know, there would be, you know, consequences, so to speak, for what Jennifer Scott would say, not being part of the family, you know. And it came down to, you know, one woman who, of course, family and kids and a life and everything else, just stood up to her and said, look, you know, you got to stop all this stuff because it's interfering with my life. I have children, I have other things to do, you know. And the job is from, like, you know, 8 in the morning until about 4 o'clock in the afternoon or so. It's salary. But it didn't stop at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It went on. It went on every night until 10:30, 11. It started as early as 4 a.m. Saturday, Sunday, just all the time. So that was a constant source of pressure. And here you have a woman, who's my former spouse, who I knew had difficulty mentally in certain things and dealing with certain things. She's compulsive in things like OCD. She'd been diagnosed with several, you know, cluster B disorders. I mean, but she and I got along fine, you know. It was whenever the outside world started, you know, interloping that there would be problems. She had people in her life that I didn't know. She had people in her life that she never had me around, you know. She'd say, like, you know, her work friends or something like that. And I was never invited to participate because she knew that I wasn't the type, that I wasn't into the whole keeping up of appearances thing, to make people think a certain way or to have a certain image or whatever. And the only reason that she did that was out of fear of her family and whatever it is that they hide. But there was covert abuse, you know. For 10 years, as I vied for her father's affection, I got nothing, you know. Only to after 10 years, I thought, you know, her mother and I were on good terms, but I only find out that all her mother did was clandestinely behind the scenes, like, abuse my former spouse, you know. And I can't indemnify my former spouse for it because she didn't. All she had to do was just not talk to him. But for some reason or other, she couldn't. As she come to me prior to her departure in June of 2017, she came to me just before Christmas, I think it was, in 2016, whenever, you know, this whole thing about what was going on or what she was hiding, because I knew there was something she wasn't telling me. I mean, when you're with somebody for as long as we were together, when you know somebody as well as she and I knew each other, I mean, we had shared dreams on occasion together, you know, where we, you know, it's very interesting. It's I love her very much. She's the love of my life. Where she'd come to me and and I'd ask her what is going on, you know, and then she'd just break down, and she told me that nowhere was far enough. And I said, what do you mean? She said, nowhere's far enough. Nowhere's far enough. I said, what do you mean? What do you mean? And she says, nowhere's far enough to get away from my family. Family. It's like that was like more important than like anything else, you know. And you know, when we first started hanging out, so to make it official that we were together and we were dating, you know, her family, you know, minus her father, came up to me on one occasion and said, we're glad. They go, you know, and they're kind of chuckling about this, and I thought it was not good at all. That's when I was made aware of this shit. She said, we're sure glad to see, you know, that she's with somebody who stand up to her daddy, you know. And they were smiling about this thing, and I didn't find it funny at all. So I kind of made sure to keep an eye and an ear on him, because that's not normal, you know, for people to say that kind of shit. And so, you know, over time, you know, he's abusive as fuck, controlling, manipulating, you know, overbearing, you know. But at the same time, you know, she used that to her advantage. You know, whenever these things happen, she gets scared or whatever, you know. Well, he just barge into people's lives and just sling her around like a fucking wrecking ball, and her mom's back having a good old time, you know. I mean, on the worst day of my life, whenever after a judge, a court order, just shit all over my civil rights, and you know, she's coming into the home after a divorce was filed and all this weirdness happens, you know, probably around August or so. They come into the house, and like it had been 60 days of just total hell for me. You know, I suffered the torture of the damned, to commit suicide, attempted to, you know, had a religious experience, and you know, I hadn't seen her. The sad part of all that is that I was looking forward to seeing her, even though they were going to be removing shit from the house. Well, I was told by an attorney, who I'd later find out was, you know, in service to her father, not letting the judge see anything that me or my family had to try to help her and save our marriage. You know, he told me this, I need to be there to record all of this. And so I had, you know, video camera and everything, and I'm recording all this stuff. And her mother is just behaving like an immature child, you know, and the end she sticks her tongue at me, you know, and I'm like, this is a grown woman acting like this, you know, and her mother is just blithely, you know, participating in all of this weirdness and shit, and I'm like a ghost in my own home, like looking and seeing my 37-year-old spouse at the time, my spouse, just behaving like a 4-year-old, trailing after her daddy, you know, tattling, and everything else, while he abused them. And, you know, her mother just talking to me about a fucking Keurig, like nothing's going on. Meanwhile, she's not looking in the camera at all. She's not looking in the camera at all, ever, not once. I looked at it sometimes, and she doesn't look in it. She avoids it altogether. The one time that she says something to me in her father's absence, in front of a sheriff who is obviously in the video like assisting her father and attempting to either A, remove evidence from the home to try to cover his ass. And he's walking back here with tools and stuff, and I got loose switch plates and wall plates and everything else, you know, and I got this cop like doing this here, signaling to him and smiling at him and all this other bullshit. Him looking at my spouse a certain way that isn't right. Well, I'm watching slow motion or whatever one time, And then I saw it. Just the subtlety of everything was overwhelming. He had her under control completely. Like a dog almost. Commands and everything. And I don't know that she knows that. But you could see it, you know. And the things that they said, you know, was just bizarre. Because anytime he was in the home and you know, and she would just be real assertive and just a cold-hearted, you know, smart-ass bitch to me. Well, on one occasion, he was out the room, and the cop and one of his goons were in our bedroom, and she says, "Where's the remote to the TV?" And the officer says, "Where's the remote to the TV?" I said, "It's under the comforter there on the bed." And she goes, "Okay, thanks." And then immediately, the officer moves in. He moves into the bedroom. The goon gets up, and they're all looking at her or whatever. And then she like walks out of the bedroom, and you can see the look on her face is like terror. She goes outside. She comes back in distressed and shaking her head, no, like this. And she walks by the officer and she goes, "I don't want to get heroin again." And he smirks at her, you know, as she walks by. I said, "What'd she say?" And he goes, "Oh, I didn't hear anything." And you know, it was weird shit like that, you know. She goes out into the garage and she's standing there thinking hard about something. And as I'm walking out with the camera, trying to get back down, I hear the officer saying, "Did he find any drugs in here?" You know? And she places down a picture that she's carrying. She walks in and she calls her father. And he shows up walking behind her with his arms crossed, and she's in front. And he's walking like in a disciplinarian stance. And they go into the master bathroom and lock the door. And the officer, I'm standing in the bedroom at the door of the master bathroom here, and I'm holding the camera. So I'm supposed to be filming all this. Are they allowed to do that, you know? And he says, "Sir, you know, if you find that any property's missing, you know, then call us and we'll come back." And I wasn't concerned at all about any property missing. I mean, they had been there taking property from the home altogether anyway. So they go into the bathroom, lock the door, and then I hear a cabinet slam, and then a squeak from a shoe, tennis shoe, because her daddy was wearing tennis shoes, and then here, just like that. And then when they emerge from the bathroom, she's got a big lump on her head. And she's behind him, and he's assertive, and he's no longer got his arms crossed and everything else. You know? And then they make a big scene about some drugs in a picture frame. Like, I don't get that. But that was the only time she looked in the camera, was when she got smacked in the bathroom. So they weren't in the bathroom. They came into the bathroom, and then they went into the closet. Because as they're emerging, I can see her coming out of the closet. There was nothing in there. They'd already cleaned it out. So they go into a closet, and then there's all this smack, and she comes out with a lump on her head. It's because she talked to me, you know, and she was told not to, and she said, "You don't even look at that camera," you know. And you can see it, everybody's on edge, you know, it's weird how subtle a lot of it is. And then I have her mother, who, when I'm walking out there, I'm thinking they're just trying to set me up. I was like, "Oh wow, you know, y'all put something in the picture frame, try to fuck me over," because I'd already found all the substances and flushed them, and one of the substances I found was heroin. And that heroin is, people were dying. And I got the added bonus of not only suffering, like, you know, silent treatment, torture, and abuse, as she was in a controlled environment. I know how controlled I was. So for somebody to tell me that she wasn't controlled in the environment, no, I'm not buying it, because they didn't see her car blocked in by his truck. They don't know, you know, what I had already been through with this maniac, and like, I mean, control, that's his thing. He's got it under control. He's control, you know. And as I start looking into this via conveyance records and various different things to find out information about this house, because I can't get any from her or anybody. That's where I'd find, like, you know, weird shit, stuff involving this guy. I'm like, well, how, you know, because all I ever knew about him is that, you know, he failed in business because of a death of his business partner, that he told me was in, I think it was like in the late 80s or something, and that he retired from a normal job. I didn't realize that he was who he is, you know. And I'm looking at Manta, you know, of all places. They've been classified as, like, per capita, the largest durable goods wholesaler in the United States. If you're asking yourself what durable goods are, you know, firearms, guns. And, you know, at the time of her departure, I was looking at a POS system, a point of sale system in my business through a company called Lavu that was showing me 602 transactions of an unknown nature, of an unknown tender, I guess you'd say, because it's cash, credit, and then, you know, gift cards, and then blank on 602 of them that were in the ID of a guy named John Sims, ID number 0. Okay, well, John Sims being fired, you know, all this stuff. Like 2 years later, the company calling me to tell me that this guy was let go. You know? Well, and then I had another 383 transactions that were just zeroed out in reporting in 1969, New Year's Eve. And that date in particular would kind of let me know that there's some pretty serious shit going on as far as theft is concerned, because, you know, if you see anything in December 31st, New Year's Eve of 1969, and it's on iOS or Unix, then you know without a doubt that transactions were deleted, like via manual input. And why somebody would delete 383 transactions, I don't know. But I didn't get 383 calls from customers that had problems with their credit card stuff. So they had to have come from an outside source, which indicated money laundering and fraud. Well, they started pretty early, I think 2015 or so, and they went on until February of 2017. Oh, sorry, yeah, they started 2015, and they ended in February 2017. Whenever the manager at the time had just quit and was accusing me of stealing. Oddly enough, all 383 of those transactions, and it exists in New Year's Eve 1969, or it happened when he was on the clock, and I did it. I looked through every single employee, and he was the only person that was there for every single one of them. Accused me of stealing. He's out the door, and the transaction stopped. Well, that was the same time she had been found at her job, just on her back, talking about chest pains, disoriented, didn't know where she was at. She didn't know what the situation of her bowels were. She didn't know anything. Chest pains, you know, and from what I understand, they just picked her up off the floor and dragged her into the administrator's office, or the administrator, like, you know, was talking to her or whatever, asked her, you know, she could help her download an app or whatever. And so I'd had enough and moved her out. But I mean, like, I thought that we were doing good, you know, because for the first 2 weeks of her being out of her job, that was the most time we'd spent together in the last year and a half. She'd been just completely abused and used and overworked at this job for a salary. The administrator, there was no middle management. You got principal, vice principal, and so on and so forth. There was no vice principal. There was nothing like that in this environment. So there was nobody to keep this person in check. At least that's what I was told. But, you know, around about November or so, Thanksgiving, I guess, you know, because from historically speaking, you know, her family started their enmeshment trauma around Christmas. You know, they used the sentiment of family and Christmas to hurt her and abuse her. She came home like just crying, upset that, you know, I wish you and my dad get along, because I'd barred him from my life and coming around our house in 2014 after he and her mother pulled this shit they pulled last time. Because I found texts and things, everything shit deleted and all this kind of stuff that was involving her mother telling my former spouse, saying, be sure you delete these messages, you know, and delete our phone calls and all the evidence or whatever, because we don't want him to know that we're giving you advice. And I mean, you know, to me, a lot of this stuff is obvious. You know, if you're giving somebody advice that includes or involves them deleting any correspondence you have with them, then the advice they're giving you isn't good at the very least, and might even be, like, you know, illegal at worst. Because after I bar him, you know, then all of a sudden I'm having all these problems in a business that was running fine for years and years and years. I bar him, and then all of a sudden I have these financial problems, you know. Well, toward the end, whenever the whole shit stopped and she's taking her job, well then, you know, then all of a sudden I find out that what was happening when I made up, cause she was crying, oh, she get along with him or whatever, and for her, and as a result of like kind of a powerful dream I had, gave me a spiritual experience, I called him, extended the olive branch, and he was at the house in like 10 minutes flat, you know. And we shook hands on it and everything, took a picture, and, you know, sent to her that we get along now. And my whole thing was, look, you know, I want to be a family. I'm tired of being brought in and ostracized. I'm tired of being brought in and cut off. You know, because I told him all this. I said, you know, anytime she has an issue or whatever, it seems like to me, you know, she just goes over there, and then I'm completely cut off, and I'm completely ignored, disregarded, invalidated, and everything else, and I don't want that. And I said, furthermore, anytime I've been invited to family events or something like that, it seems like immediately following, I'm barred from participating in family events and abused and ostracized and everything else. So I said, I don't want that. I try to be a family. And he agreed and shook on it. And 6 months later, she's out the door and he's smiling in my face. And this was November of 2016. I mean, he sends a picture, started making up, so everything's all gravy and everything, you know, until it's time, I guess. Because all I have to go by is the evidence of what I know, is that what it looks like at the time, there's about maybe it was showing $400,000 or so in an unbatched credit card total that just nobody can answer. And currently it's up to $782,000 in an unbatched credit card total, which is just bizarre to me, to say the least. But there was no access like that from the terminal that we had, so they'd have to have like a hacker or somebody who was, you know, new network intrusion security and stuff like that. Well, you know, right as he and I are shaking hands, he had just secured a $400,000 trust for himself, and I was missing that. I didn't know all this until I looked at the records at the courthouse. And then in February, when she was taken out of her job, was the time which the guy that she's living with now, moving into their second home in the last 8 months or so, their second new home they're moving into. The guy that she's with purchased a house on a deed of trust for $400,000. And when she left, that's what I was missing, you know. Well, the guy that she's with, the guy lives in Colorado, and he's IT, according to his LinkedIn, he's an IT network intrusion and security expert, you know. And so the way that it looks to me is that, like, I'm missing $400,000. Her daddy secured a $400,000 trust. She's out the door, and she's on with a hacker who bought a $400,000 home after he quit his job, a hacker. You know, and then I open up the iPad and I'm looking there, and there's, you know, a Ricky Bobby, because that's what they called me, as their smear campaigns, a meth-addicted maniac that crammed guns down her throat and was violent through our whole marriage, which is untrue. And she knows it, I hope. I don't know what she knows. I'd later find out that like people can be abused to the point where they actually believe that their lies and their bullshit's true. But you know, she's on there. This is Ricky Bobby's blowing up dad, saying you and I aren't smart enough to cover up our money laundering scheme. And she's talking with this woman, who's a former key holding employee of my business, who had access, you know, and her husband, FYI, and you keep all this very private until I know things are set up safely, indicating set up, indicating a third party that's gonna like let her know, hey, yeah, you know, it's good, things are safe now, you can go with whatever. I mean, really? So I'm missing all this money. She's carrying on with a former key employee about a money laundering scheme. Her dad's securing a $400,000 trust for her. And then all of a sudden she's on, I guess when she found out that things were set up safely, she's on with a hacker, you know, who bought a $400,000 house after he quit. Nobody buys a $400,000, nobody buys a house when they quit their job, you know. And then all of these people, you see the P.O. boxes, and you know, just all the red flags are there. Well, I called the FBI. And the FBI come out, I showed them what I had or whatever, and thank you, have a nice day. And then they just kind of, they just told me, well, yeah, well, you know, in a nutshell, we called the company and, you know, asked them, they said it's just a glitch, so, you know, you have a lot of red flags, sir, but we're not going to open a case. What? You know? Meanwhile, here come FBI, you know, to go and investigate what they're saying is like a excessive force in the sheriff's department. And I've had problems with sheriffs, goddamn, since day one, not responding to alarms going off in my business all through the month of June 2017 before she's out the door. They don't call. Everything from that to you know, one I don't know if it could be a coincidence or not, but the daughter of a deputy sheriff kind of started talking to me or whatever online. I invited her over to the house and she almost killed my dog, you know, and I have all that on damn recording, which is almost hard, it's almost impossible to think about, you know, to a sheriff assisting him, my former father-in-law in doing whatever it was they were doing in the bedroom for an hour and a half while one of his goons is sitting there wrapping the power cord to a TV for freaking an hour or 45 minutes, you know, obviously just stand there, you know. So, I mean, blame, I mean, I'm allowed. Because here I'm reading on Facebook, on her messenger, that from an iPad that she left on, where she's saying that she's telling the manager of my business, the person who was present for all 383 of the missing transactions on that end. I don't know about the 602 other ones, I just give up. But for all 383, the guy's present for all this shit, and she sends a letter to him saying that, you know, she finally realized what a lying, cheating piece of shit I am, and I'm not. I wasn't lying, I wasn't cheating, and I'm not a piece of shit. Well, I don't know. I mean, that's I guess subjective or whatever. But I wasn't lying or cheating. Somebody. But you know, at the same time, I'm seeing a spouse who's lying, who's not telling the truth, who's like, you know, gathering flying monkeys, who's going behind my back and recruiting all these former employees and people that would have a grudge against me for whatever reason to their cause. But I never, not once did I ever think that was her that was doing that. I got the impression it was her mother that was using an account, you know, that was using her Facebook account to keep up appearances, you know, or whatever. And I have good reason to believe that as well. Furthermore, I believe that it was made to look as though the manager did the things that he did not do. Because if it were the case that he did, she wouldn't be speaking to him in June or July of 2017 as though they hadn't communicated in forever. But I know one thing. My former spouse had him and his husband blocked on her Facebook. You know, she didn't want to be around them. And I don't know why. You know, but what I do know is that, you know, in the end, this person had told several hundred of our regular clients that we were booked up for 2 years in advance, and they stopped coming. Our business took a nosedive, and then in the end, whenever he crippled it to the point where, you know, it was going to be very hard work to bring it back. Whereas the police can ruin that with my face in the paper over all kinds of stuff that I didn't do, and drugs and all this shit that wasn't mine. Then the charges were dropped, but it didn't change the fact that my face was in the newspaper, and that was it. They finished us off. Finished me off in a business that I loved and the community loved, over lies and bullshit to protect something. It was, why? What are they protecting? Well, I got a fucking very serious discrepancy in my POS system, looked like money laundering, and the bulk, of the way that it was manipulated was made to look like one man who was an older man, friend of the family, he wouldn't do that. One man looked to be the mastermind of this whole thing, who just happened to have been formerly married to a large landowner in the state, Louisiana. And of course, my former father was a timberman and everything else. He's a landowner, all this shit, And then the other was a gay man who's married, to another gay man. And, not to be ugly or whatever. She didn't really care too much for gay people, and she had like a natural fear of HIV, and that was taught, hatred and stuff like that kind of thing, and judgment and bigotry, that kind of stuff is taught, it's learned, and she learned it from somewhere. There you go. And so for me, blame. Yeah, I have to blame her. Even though I don't want to. Just like in the end, after I didn't want any of this shit, all I wanted was an alternative dispute resolution. And I told my attorney time and time again to ask for it, and he never did any of that shit. So I don't even know what was done. I don't know what was sent to her. I don't know what he did to serve her daddy and all of this, but I do know that, her daddy's smiling in my face. Like he's just proud of what he's done, and he knows that, that there's nothing that I can do to save my spouse, because he's got it under control. Because if the allegations are true, that I did all these horrible, awful, nasty things, he damn sure wouldn't be smiling in my face. And what it boiled down to was simple. I just have to read into the context to determine what it was. Because with the things that I know that I didn't do, or things that they're saying that I did, that I know I didn't do, then I have no choice but to say that those are things that they did. For example, like she says, he's saying he's blowing up my dad, saying we're not smart enough to cover up our money laundering scheme. Well, there you have it. Because why would they go to money laundering? Why would they be joking about money laundering? Why would they lying about money laundering? Considering the circumstance, I'm all this money and this discrepancy and almost $1 million and missing all this shit. Considering all that, why wouldn't they say you and I aren't smart enough to cover up our our lies or our drug dealing or whatever the fuck, anything else that they're just making stuff up and joking around? Because I never called her dad and told him about money laundering or anything. And so there she's implicating her dad in a sense that, like, what her dad just comes up and says, yeah, he's been calling me saying y'all aren't smart enough to cover up y'all money laundering scheme. But I could see him saying he thinks he's smarter than me, because he's in charge, he's in control. Well, for some reason or another, he's pissing money away, left and right. He had a little hunting club, that's gone out, that's closed now. The FBI go in the sheriff's office to confiscate all their computers, their cell phones, all their records and everything else. So, and blame, yeah. He just doesn't stop. It was never my intention to bring any of this shit to anybody, whatever. Because I didn't even fucking know. I didn't know. I come home, she's gone. And as it has happened in the past several times, he forcibly removed her from the home. As soon as I turned my back, block her up in the driveway. And what they did was they violated an OPC with efforts by my family, as recommended by a doctor and the parish coroner. And they violated it. Something happened. We don't even know what happened. Because when we went to service at the police station, the police weren't even out the door whenever they said she was on her way. An ambulance was dispatched. Okay? I would later get see messages that she's communicating with a friend, I guess, of hours, you know, whatever, that I didn't know about. That a police car came and picked her up, which is either A lie, or B, one of her daddy's buddies. Because I heard over the radio or whatever bullshit. And for them to do, you know, that kind of thing or whatever, they had to know what was going on. I've long since suspected that the house is wired. You know, because his control is like that. You know, she wouldn't get off his phone plan for the entire time we were together. It's the same phone number, his phone plan. She says because they were grandfathered into unlimited data, but when the unlimited data came back out, and I had a business plan, it would have been cheaper and better for her to have one under our plan. And plus, she wouldn't be liable to her father for a bill or whatever that she never paid. She wouldn't do it. She wouldn't do it. And, you know, anything that she got, like a vehicle, this house, everything he was involved in, just like, you know, intimately, where it said, because he told us, y'all need to find, I want y'all to find a house, you know, I'm going to cash out a little retirement. You know, I looked at my retirement and I have just enough to be able to buy y'all a house if you pay me back and all this shit. And that was a lie, obviously. So, I mean, here's a man who I know lied to me about finances and everything else, and he lied to her about it, because they were already within 2 months of getting this house that, of course, he found for her. You know, they come to find out he turned to make a little money off of it, you know, his own daughter, and then also all the people that have been here previously, or at least showing to have been here previously, or people that he knows and associates with. You know, he is skulking around there. Like, we made an agreement that I would pay him back, you know, a monthly fee, and so we'd come out with it, and then after 2 years, I'd buy it outright in cash. And we were well on our way. I had saved a pretty good bit of cash by the time we ended up having to buy it whenever he broke his word, which is not uncommon for him. I mean, there's a court precedence in workman's comp claims with Willie Fee versus Southern Packaging Inc. Willie Fee, I think is his name. Willie Fee, Walter, that's it. Walter Fee versus Southern Packaging Inc. There's a court case where precedent is set where he lies. You know, and as you can see that he lost that case with lying. And you can also see that, like, you know, his defense in the end was that, you know, if there's no one else around as involved party and like actually getting the deal to witness a handshake, then it makes a contract. So you can see where he's like, you know, break his word or whatever by going back and falling back on that bullshit. And the fact is, he shook a man's hand and the man was injured, and then he wanted to wash his hands of that man. So, you know, and fuck with him at the same time. But so there's precedence for his lies. Well, like, you know, 3 months, 4 months into us having the home, we already aware that somebody is coming in and just rifling through our things. She knows that sort of thing because she's obsessive compulsive. She knows her house has to be a certain way, and if shit's out of place, she knows it. And shit was out of place, and she knows it. And he's the only other person with a key. Not to mention the fact that I'd caught him skulking around the yard, you know, looking in windows and stuff or whatever. And then so we go back to his word to buy the house from him. We do that and everything else. I mean, he's control. He tracks our car, or get a phone on his plan, you know, probably house probably wired up. I just found some weird shit in the home that I'm waiting on an inspection for, to have somebody tell me what the fuck it is. And I mean, what I'm looking at looks to be explosives, believe it or not. Something that could be used to catch fire to the home. And it was connected to a phone tap, which could be more than likely, from what I can tell, triggered remotely. So here I am having no answers, no justice, and I'm having to pay. This happens to me the first of the month. It takes me like 5 or 6 days to pay the mortgage because I just get locked up in PTSD and depression and suicidal thoughts and everything as over and over and over and over again. And because I can't get any answers. Not even to service the account. You know, the mortgage. I don't know what insurance, I don't know what the fuck is going on, as I was ordered to pay it. And I had an attorney that said, look, we need answers. He said, we can't get it. He didn't do shit. Except, you know, reconventional demand, and I was the one that had to initiate the divorce. The last thing that I wanted in life, the last thing that I wanted to do in life, and I put up a fucking fight to have to sign that paperwork. I put up a fight. Because I didn't want any. They started all this shit. He started all this shit. And in the end, and this is his sick mentality, I was the one that had to sign the divorce paper. And I shouldn't have done it. Because I didn't realize I was being advised shittily. You know, because I was told by my attorney that she doesn't want to communicate, she doesn't want to talk, she doesn't want to enter any kind of dispute resolution, she doesn't want shit, you know, whatever, to forget about it. And then something between her attorney, well, I should say her attorney, the attorney that her daddy paid for, her daddy pays the bill, so the attorney answers to he who has the biggest pile of meat, so to speak, her loyalty. At least, like a dog, you know, loyalty. The dog's loyal through and through. Their loyalty ultimately lies with whoever has the biggest pile of meat, and that's where the loyalty was at, was to his pocket. And something or other, she's sort of mental health issues or whatever, and then before she goes to meet up with her attorney, she says, you know, I'm scared. I feel like a fool. Hang on a second. Okay, I'm mostly scared because I feel like a fool because I know I did some really stupid shit, but knowing that I didn't do anything on purpose to try to hurt him, and that the stupid shit I did was to keep him out of trouble. Hopefully that'll save me here. So she had concern, as she expressed to this former key-holding piece of shit, you know, who is a former, Holbrook was the last name, it's a mother who's associate, you know, and they're all connected. And was oddly, you know, participating, showed up out of nowhere and everything. I just had an onslaught in 2015 of just shit people who came from the woodwork, Winfield, Coshada, places that were hours away to come in and do this or whatever, you know. And she was manipulated into everything. She goes to meet with this attorney, and then she comes out, motherfucker is going down and there ain't gonna be no mercy, and I'm doing it for justice, as though I'd broken some kind of a law. And she was told something. She was told something that made her like completely maligned against me, okay? And then she was abused to the point where chemical lobotomy, basically. And which is something that has been done by her family to her for decades. And all I wanted to do was for her to come to the home and take a look at the shit that I was looking at, so that at least by comparative analysis, we could know what the fuck was going on, because I still don't know what's going on. The last time I saw her, we made love, and she said she loved me, and she was sorry, and we made love, and I love her, dude. That's the last time I saw her. And then so in her absence, after she loves me and makes love, over a period of months of being abused by her family, she's maligned against me, thinks I'm a psycho, and hates my guts. We had no contact with one another. How do you go from being in love as a married couple to split apart by an abusive family, and then her hating me and not even fucking giving a shit about me altogether, to being malignantly aligned against me without us even having any contact with one another? How does that happen? People are fucking lying. And I didn't lie. I kept true to my word. I got her mother in that incident where he does whatever they do in the closet. I know what I heard, and I know what I see on her forehead in video. But I could be wrong about everything. Because I don't know anything. She doesn't talk. Which is one thing she doesn't do. And because it's this big giant secret that she just doesn't fucking say. And I have a feeling I know what it is, you know, but I don't say either, because it's not my whatever. They can have that bullshit. But her, mother says, and all that stuff, how she would come out of the bathroom and I'm recording this stuff in the home, and she's removing not really her things, because everything that I knew of her was left behind. And her mother, like, I say something, and then her mother goes, well, he's been trying to set her up for months. And this was like, I think August or something. I hadn't been trying to set her up. I've been trying to get her the fuck out of there. I'd flushed all the substances. I'd done, you know, I'd done it. As a matter of fact, everything I've done was to avoid the setup and being set up, you know? So her mother saying this indicated to me that, one, there was a setup, you know? But she's saying that I'm not, and I wasn't. So what that tells me is that they lied to her and told her something involving me and trying to set her up. And I can only imagine that it was because of the money that I was looking at that was missing. And if it had been, you know, the manager or whatever, then why? That's my thing. We're not in collusion with each other. I don't know anything about a setup. And if they're telling her about a setup and they have all these sheriffs and shit, like, well, then guess what? You know, either her mother or her father is responsible for the discrepancy in my business, or they know who is. One or the other. There's no alternative. That's it. Either they did it or they know who did. And they lied to her about it. Now, what I don't understand is what, I don't care how it went down or whatever. All I know is I borrowed from her life. I had discrepancy in my business. I welcome back in. The shit stops. And then, and then she's out the door after we shake the hand, this whole plan and all this shit. I find out that he's got aliases and everything else and all this blah, blah, blah. I mean, and then she's talking about a setup, and I'm not trying to set her up. I'm trying to help her, and she's not talking to me. She's malignantly lying against me or whatever. It's because they told her that I was trying to set her up. And I know because I'm looking at her iPad, seeing that he don't think it's smart enough to cover money laundering scheme. Well, why would a father go and say, you know, he don't think you're smart enough to cover up your money laundering scheme or whatever? And all the while, I was already under the impression that her mother was using her damn Facebook or whatever. I mean, come on. But she doesn't talk. So ultimately, I have to blame her because she doesn't talk. She won't say anything. She won't talk. You know, and any attempts that I made to try to get in touch with her, she wouldn't make any sense. She'd be invalidated. She'd stand off. She wouldn't do shit. You know, on one occasion, she's on the phone or whatever, and she's 7 minutes, she doesn't say a fucking thing, and then she just hangs up. You know? He led her on a primrose path, and she believes that she's doing the right thing to find herself, but they abuse the piss out of her. What kind of parents, one, would not tell a husband who's like trying to figure out what the fuck is going on with the SSRIs and benzodiazepines? What kind of parents would tell the guy about the past and history? What kind of parents would come in and use her as a damn wrecking ball in people's lives or whatever and initiate an enmeshment trauma at a time where she stopped taking SSRIs to lead her through a freaking divorce and just all this stressful shit? Why would they do all that? Why would they go to such great lengths to not tell me the truth about what the hell is going on? Why would they lie to her and everything else if they didn't do it? And I think that she was just a fucking patsy because the best way that they could serve their fucking needs to cover their ass after Harold Lee was indicted by the U.S. Department of Justice and they'd done this shit, the best way they could cover their ass or whatever was to at least try to make it look like I was trying to set her up, and at worst, they'd be indemnified for the shit, you know? Because if I didn't go down for it, then she would, and they wouldn't have anything to worry about. And they were covering their asses. And what she doesn't understand, what she doesn't care about, is that means that her fucking family set her ass up. And they still have her set up in a fucking house that they're paying for. She's moving into a brand new build out. And everything, if anything is on the pipe, because she left that iPad, and I bet she got fucking beaten the shit out of for that or abused for that. That if she hadn't listened to it, it looks like straight path leading right to her. And no matter what I do, I cannot blame her for it. I can't fucking say, okay, she did it, because my heart tells me otherwise. And I have evidence. But she's on with one of her dudes. She's on with the hacker that fucking did the shit. You know? And I'm sure that her parents set it up. Because she shows up in our divorce. She shows up at the courtroom with her daddy and his parents, the boyfriend's parents, the guy she's sleeping with behind my back. His parents are in the courtroom during our divorce. And that was just an insult. My parents were there, and we were just, we're devastated. And they could care less. And her, she has the reason. She has an excuse with me, at least, because she's fucking mentally ill. And they took advantage of her. So now, you know, between cleaning the house and trying to keep up responsibilities and do all this bullshit, it takes me 6-7 hours if I leave the house every day to do anything at all. Except sit on the couch in the same fucking place and ruminating this thing over and 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 over again until I just pass out from it. You know? And I miss her. She's my soulmate. She really was. And I was hers. I mean, don't want to say was, I mean, she is. And I'm hers. And she's not happy. I know she's not happy. But what's she gonna do? She's fucking terrified of her family. They lied fucking to her. They had his buddies, his comp buddies, and people lied to her. You know? And her mother was using her Facebook page to keep up appearances. I believe that. You know? Because then I would later hear that I hacked her accounts and did all this bullshit, and I didn't hack shit. Hack? I'm not a fucking hacker. She's with a hacker. And over an hour now, it's like, gotta go. Gotta go sit down on the couch and see what I can do here. But I mean, if she gets to us, you know, I love you. And it's been 18 months. I haven't heard anything. Your daddy's still fucking with me. He's so far sent 4 prostitutes to fuck with me, believe it or not. And the girl that told me about the whole thing's missing. She's been missing for 6 months. Her car's still in the yard. And I wish you'd call or come home. Because only you can put a stop to it. You know, and you know I'll have your back. She knows I'll have her fucking back. You know, her whole family knows that. I still have her back despite all that's been done. And the ruination of my life and her life and everything else. I mean, she's still looking forward to Thanksgiving with the family. And I still don't know anything. I don't know anything. I've had to piece all this together without her, without my soulmate, without my life partner. I've had to put all this shit together. My focus rapidly became her father because of him smiling in my face and his abuse. And people in the community come and tell me about abuse. People in the community tell me about a police standoff at his home where he's threatening suicide with a gun and everything else. People in the community telling me he's been fucking people over 30 years, and mortgage and bullshit and everything else, crime, white collar. So his is coming. But hers, I know what he thinks. You know, a man like that, I got nothing for him. Ruins people's lives. Ruined mine and hers, his own damn daughter. He'd do this too. I was his son. He did it to his son. He didn't care. You know, he's just smiling in my face because he knows he's in control. And he doesn't see through my eyes what I see is someone that was abused to the point of emotional availability of a 4-year-old, which just happens to be the age she was whenever some whatever happened to her hip that put her in traction for a year. And they know how to enable her. They know. And they did absolutely nothing except enable her during the whole time we were struggling. Matter of fact, the case that she had against the freaking school board was highly litigible. It was so litigible, in fact, that we sat down with a magistrate judge and 2 other attorneys on the matter. 3 freaking attorneys, and one of them was a magistrate judge, and she said, nah, she didn't want to sue him. And I know that she probably went to her mother or went to her father for their fucking advice. And they told her, no, don't do it, because it would have interfered with their fucking plans over what her daddy had fucking done to my business for fucking ostracizing him and cutting him off like he does me and like he does everybody, especially people that come into her life. And then I see, after I get text from my itinerary, I thought I got a plane ticket, somebody was doing something surprise for me or whatever because of the level of fucking depression and suicide I'd been at. I pull up to the airport and there's her mother loading her up to go get on a plane to go spend a week at a time, or some dude that she don't even goddamn know, apparently, you know, spend Christmas. And that Christmas thing was bullshit because I broke down. I left my parents' home. I had to leave because I couldn't handle it because she wasn't there by my side. And I took all the presents, the fucking Christmas presents my parents got for me, sat on my kitchen counter for like almost 3 fucking weeks before I opened them. And I broke. And all I wanted was for her to call. Well, she puts up on Instagram like this collage of pictures that's like our pub, Lucy, you know, and then, but it's like from the previous year's Christmas, like it's 2017 Christmas. I'm suffering, wishing she'd call and thinking that she's abused and knowing all this shit and everything's going on, her fucking father, a piece of shit and everything, just hating my life, wanting to kill myself and eventually doing so, or attempting to do so, I should say. There's this collage that has like the Christmas of 2016, my stocking, her stocking, our Christmas tree, those kids, our whole situation. And I thought for a moment, wow, she's really that abused. Is her way of telling me something or saying something to me, and I just broke down. Only later to find out, or at least be given the information that she was staying with her fucking boyfriend in another state. And the thought of her doing something like that while she was at her boyfriend's house, it's either A, that's how abused she is, or B, that's how fucking malignant she is. And you with somebody as long as I was, you're fucking malignant. You know? She wasn't a liar and she wasn't a thief. You tell me 10 years of bank wrecks and stuff, she had control of the finances and connected to my bank account. You tell me what 10 years there wasn't a single fucking discrepancy until June she's out the door. I don't know her as a liar, I don't know her as a thief. But her daddy's a liar. I know that he lied to me and there's a court case that sets precedent for him being a liar. So I can only imagine that having the stress of doing what he did, losing in a court case, and Harold Lee being indicted by the U.S. Department of Justice for mortgage fraud. Well, it's time to start up an enmeshment for trauma, and as he's losing control over everything in his life, that's where he could have some control, and that's what he did. And her mother enabled it behind the scene, clandestinely, fucking with her on the phone and everything else. I mean, it's just shit garbage. And all she had to do over the last 18 months is go to her husband. That's what marriage is for. That's the whole point. When the devil comes in there and tries to usurp something or whatever, you cling together. Cleave to your husband, husband cleave to the wife. And she failed at the most basic responsibility that a wife's supposed to uphold. So blame, I have to blame her for the dissolution of the marriage. You know? And she was her fault. And when the matter of the marriage is over, I have to deal with the dissolution of a business. And that's another story entirely. And all she has to do is pick up the phone. Or send an email, or send something, do something. She could have got a burner, or whatever, but I'm sure she's that afraid, or that scared, or whatever. And if she's that afraid, and she's that scared, that means Daddy's got something in the house that he's listening to me on. Every step of the way. And I know this, and that's why I talk shit. Because he can hear me. And I want him listening whenever I say every dollar that he spends hurts. And I know it. I know that every fucking dollar hurts. But he also knows he's guilty. And I ain't dead yet. Because as long as he feels like he has control, I'm useful to him.